Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and if you haven't heard the news, 9.1 patch could potentially be on the horizon sometime on PTR. It's not a confirmation and there was no developer post about it, but there are some new information about a planned 9.1, and that means potentially a bunch of changes in the new patch. A 0.5 patch in World of Warcraft in the past generally meant quality of life changes and maybe even some class changes, or maybe some small side content that isn't part of like the main story of the expansion or some of the big raids or dungeons or anything in that regards. So I want to put together a list of some of the wishes that a lot of players have been asking for Shadowlands and the future of WoW. And those are some of the things that potentially Blizzard could have on their to-do list for the potentially sometime in the future. We don't really know when, but maybe in 9.1. So let's take a look at this list and what players have been asking for quite a bit of time. Number one on this list is class changes. Who doesn't want some buffs and nerfs, but also who doesn't want some new gameplay features added to classes? Everybody likes just number tunings, but a 0.5 patch in the past has generally been when Blizzard does any kind of radical changes to classes, big and small. It usually means something is going to be new for one or the other. Sometimes changing them in radical ways, sometimes in very small ways, but it makes those specs playable. Doesn't really alter the general playstyle, but maybe there's a mechanic or two, maybe a slight gameplay element that just wasn't quite fitting right. Assassination was definitely that spec in 9.05, and since then it became a monster when it comes to raids and PvP. Very popular right now in Shadowlands, back to the original glory. So while right now I don't have any specific class that is being clamored for, I think some of the things that Blizzard could consider for a variety of specs would be maybe taking a look at some of the dead talents. Some talents are designed for AoE, some talents are designed for single target fights, some talents have a better defensive value in X or Y situation. So every talent hopefully should have some sort of playability to it. But when it comes to the actual breakdown of which are the most popular talents, which are the least popular, we generally get to see the same stuff picked by a variety of classes. Sometimes you have the same builds for PvE and PvP. And what most players want is variety, but also more competitive options, as sometimes there's just only one real option to pick from, and the other ones are just not worth considering. So that is something I feel like they could totally work on in the future. I also asked a lot of you guys in the community, what do you think we should be getting in the future? And some of you guys said better secondary stats. Primarily mastery. Not every single class's mastery is a beneficial stat or a good one, and wouldn't be awesome to have a mastery that actually benefits some sort of a playstyle. The change to Shadow Priest in Shadowlands I will forever sing is one of the better masteries added to the game, as it makes it first of all functional, but also comprehensive and usable. And of course we have the Windwalker with their mastery, where as long as your abilities are not a repeat of each other, you have a damage buff increase, which fuels a very fun and varied playstyle. Certain classes with their masteries, if you stack them up to a certain point, your playstyle changes completely. Like mages, for example, fire mages. Yeah, they have, Pyroblast and Fire Blast, but if you stack a lot of mastery, you end up having this damage over time component that normally wouldn't be part of your gameplay. So I think it's worth taking a look at some of the specs whose masteries are just some of the worst valued stat, even if you get them in huge bulks, because some of these classes have insanely good mastery, or a mastery that's not primary stats, but even if you get like 500 of it from a proc, it's not a bad stat. And there's other classes where the stat is literally a detriment to your DPS if you stack it past a certain point. Another feature that players have been asking for quite a bit is Master Looter. Back in the day, we used to have Master Looting versus Personal Loot, which allowed whoever is the leader of the raid to set how loot is distributed. Personal Loot will give everybody their own chance at getting something from the boss. Master Loot will allow the raid based on your size to get a set amount of gear, and the Master Looter gets to distribute who gets it. For guilds that are looking at serious progression and are looking to gear their raid to give those pieces to the classes that will benefit the raid the most, Master Looter was just a better option. And it's sorely missed when it comes to RNG of, let's say, world first bosses, with the Sanctum of Domination in particular. Some players of big time guilds just simply didn't really get to compete as part of the world first because they were unlucky with the gear they've gotten. They didn't get enough domination gear or domination sockets, therefore they missed out on the bonuses, therefore they couldn't really compete. So Master Looter would at least try to eliminate this by allowing the guild and everybody in that raid to decide who gets the piece, and usually it'll be a raid lead. To be honest, I don't really remember why Master Looter was removed. I just remember at the time in Legion, there was a lot of forum posts talking about greedy GMs taking all the loot for themselves or to give it to their friends or officers, where regular raiders just were denied any loot. Now, that might not have been direct reason why we lost Master Looter privileges, but that's all I remember from that era. And then following those forum posts, they decided for Battle for Azeroth, only personal loot. Master Looter just makes the game easier to play in terms of gearing the characters and trying to get the full raid ready for the content. And I feel that it could return maybe with an opt-in option. If everybody in the raid opts into Master Looter, then it allows that raid to have Master Looter privileges. And you could keep the pug groups with personal loot if they so prefer. Another feature in Shadowlands that players have been asking for, primarily from the PvP side of the game, is a change in how we gear our characters. Currently, the game rewards you with higher item level loot if you are better rated in PvP combat. 2v2s, 3v3s, RBGs. I guess the idea is the better the player you are, the better you are at your class, the better synergies and coordination you have with your arena team over the other team will reward you with a higher rating. It also means with better gear. This doesn't account for any of the boosting that happens in PvP or any of kind of carries that goes on. Whether you like the system or not, it does create a feature where the rich get richer. So if you're someone who has had very early PvP success, maybe you're really good at the game and your team has coordination, maybe there was some busted legendary that you used to climb really high in rating, maybe you just play Beast Mastery Hunter. The players that are performing well in PvP and are getting a higher rating are getting better gear, while players that are not competing or not performing as well aren't able to access the same gear. So the idea is floated around, what if we brought in the WoD style PvP gearing, where instead of having different ranks for PvP gear for Conquest gear and Honor gear, it's just one set item level. You have one set item level for Honor gear, one set item level for Conquest gear, so that a player that does play arenas a lot will be able to access their Conquest full set early, while someone who plays the game more casually, doesn't compete in arenas, or doesn't perform nearly as well in rated content will eventually be able to get their Conquest set, just not as fast as the top performing or higher rated players. It's definitely an interesting idea, and Blizzard did make changes to PvP gear for patch 9.1, whereas PvP gear is generally better for PvP and gives PvEers less incentive to do PvP to take that gear into raids, because in the first season of Shadowlands, some of the best tank gear actually came from PvP, which forced raiders to PvP in order to get some of the better gear to take into the dungeons and raids. My point is, if Blizzard is open to making changes to PvP gear and PvE gear, then maybe they're open to more changes in the future, but who knows. Legion Timewalking. We need it right now. Legion was a great expansion. Many of us enjoyed it. The artifact weapons, the mage tower experience, the dungeons, the raids. It was all a lot of fun. This is where Mythic Plus started. This is where a lot of the Mythic raiding, and at least this is where a lot of my Mythic raiding came from. The whole experience of that expansion was just a dream come true. It'll also be pretty cool to go back and relive it, maybe with some time walking events for Legion, starting off with maybe some dungeons. In a sense, you can already do some Legion dungeons if you're leveling as a character, but at max level, there's really no need to do so. But to be able to go back and replay same dungeons with maybe some unique Legion rewards. And what I would be really excited to see is some of the dungeons we haven't seen in a while, like the part 1 and part 2 of Karazhan, the Legion version of that dungeon. I miss it dearly. Also, Triumvirate as a last dungeon of Legion as well. That'd be interesting to revisit, as well as Cathedral, some of the dungeons you don't really get to experience when you're leveling through the Legion content. We could also not forget about the Archway as well as the Court of Stars, some of the most ran dungeons for me from back in the old days. Cross-faction content or cross-faction play is another idea that got floated around quite a bit as of recently. Generally for World of Warcraft, Horde and Alliance in terms of population numbers have been fairly close. But when it comes to the competitive side of the game, like the raiding content, maybe the arenas and Mythic Pluses, that's where we really see this skew for the game. Like the current top 100 guilds that are in Sanctum of Domination slaying Sylvanas on Mythic, there's a far more Horde guilds that are getting that achievement than there is Alliance guild, at least at the moment. Eventually, Alliance names of guilds will populate those top 100 charts, but it's definitely taken a little bit longer. Anecdotally, a lot of my friends told me that just trying to get keys done as Alliance player for 15s can be kind of rough, but even looking for like 18s, puck groups, 20s, and really pushing is very difficult on Alliance unless you actually know somebody. Which is interesting because when it comes to the MDI and the Great Push, the Alliance ratios are generally considered stronger. The Night Elf skips or picking up dwarves for spells, as well as the raw damage that you output just for playing an Alliance, they definitely gain a lot of benefit when it comes to competitive play. But when it comes to like the live servers, there's just not nearly as many groups. The PvP side of the game is a little different. There's quite a few people playing Alliance, quite a few people playing Horde. It all depends on the region you're in, NA, EU, Australia. These numbers are really difficult to track, and also it's really difficult to be sure of authenticity. This is the closest thing that I could find of any website that actually tracks it and breaks it down based by faction. This number changes depending if you're looking at the high-end PvP or more overall PvP like 1800 plus. It also doesn't encapsulate every single region, mostly EU and NA, so the numbers could vary if we were to really broaden the horizon. So the idea is, what if you're just an Alliance player, you want to play Alliance, you like the lore, you like the racial, you like the way the gear looks in you, but you just want to get some keys done? Being able to pair up with a group that maybe might be playing Alliance or Horde might just be easier if you didn't have to care about the faction. You could just look up LFG and there you're in. The one thing that I did like about WoW at the very start, though, that really originally drew me to the whole universe was the faction combat, the Alliance and Horde, the clear lines that are drawn. And while it's not really much of anything more than just like a gameplay element, I still personally enjoy it. But if you were to expand the LFG tool to include Horde as well as Alliance players, when you're looking for dungeon groups, it would easily allow players to play the faction they want to, while also still being able to have more groups and more options in terms of keys or arenas or whatever it may be. I don't really know how far it would go. Would there be some cross-faction raiding? Players have always floated that idea before. Maybe it's something for Blizzard to consider in the future. Heritage armor is something we haven't seen in a bit. We got quite a lot of heritage armor options in Battle for Azeroth. We had the Tauren heritage armor, dwarves, blood elves, goblins, worgen, and I believe I'm missing one. I think maybe it's gnomes, but we haven't seen heritage armor in quite a bit, and only wonder what it might look like for orcs. And you know, if our orcs going to be looking like Grom Hellscream or maybe just like Thrall, can we maybe potentially get Varian's epic armor with the eagle and the lion on both shoulders as human, for example? What about some of the other races in the game and their heritage armor? What does it look like, or what might it look like in the future? Pandas, what kind of heritage armor would they wear? Definitely a lot of questions when it comes to the heritage armor idea, but it also would be kind of cool. I never hated the heritage armor thing that they added for BFA. It kind of just gave whatever faction or whatever race that you chose to play as your character opportunity to get something unique for your character with a small storyline that maybe solidified why you chose to be a worgen, to be a gnome, to be a tauren, with a cool quest line and whatnot. Maybe in the future that might be something on the table. Maybe not an expansion of Shadowlands, but maybe in the next one. But heritage armor has been floated around quite a bit recently. Renown for all characters. As players are clamoring for even more catch-up elements to be added to the game, can we get some more renowns for alts? Maybe find a way for your main to just purchase renown for alts with anima or whatever it may be. Players want to play alts. Players want to be able to get all these new soul binds and all these different additions, and I'm someone who is trying to spend as much time as I can on my alts to unlock the new Covenant legendaries, to unlock all these soul binds in order to be able to truly experience how some of these characters are going to play, because certain combinations don't really work until you unlock that final soul bind trait. So players have been asking, is there some potentially more renown catch-up on the way? Maybe double, triple, quadruple renown catch-up for anything you do, be it world quests, callings, dungeons, you name it. Renown already does have a catch-up element, but just by doing the main story quest of Renown for your Covenant, you get double the Renown until about rank 30 or so. And I believe some of the earlier content like dungeons and callings also can give you double Renown as well. So the game technically does try to kickstart you with Renown as soon as possible, but being able to skip through a lot of that Renown grinding when you want to check out a different Covenant on your main, or you just got an old character up and running and you want to catch back up to your main as soon as you can to really truly play through your alt, and you don't want to do that Covenant campaign all over again because you've already done it on 5 other alts, then that might be not a bad idea as to why we should potentially have something to skip renowns, or at least skip the campaign for our alt characters. Brawlers Guild hasn't been a thing in a while, and maybe now is the time to give it a big old update. Single target or single solo player content is something that players kind of enjoy. It's a MMO, but the Mage Tower was a very popular experience back in Legion. A lot of people enjoyed that solo experience. It was just you versus the boss and the mechanics in the fight. A very Dark Souls-esque experience, and for some players at early levels, it was really challenging. Made definitely easier by some of the catch-up gear towards the later part of the expansion, but still, a lot of players enjoyed it. Brawlers Guild is the closest thing we have to it, except for that whole waiting in line part, which I'm not a huge fan of. Brawlers Guild offers you different fights with different mechanics and rewards on top of it. So a refresher to those rewards, maybe different transmog with Brawlers, wouldn't be the worst idea. Watching your peers compete against certain bosses to maybe learn a trick or two, watching them make mistakes so then you might be able to have an easier time in the Brawlers Guild isn't the worst thing. Although I do think they should maybe get rid of the whole queue system. I would like to just be able to jump into it and get some of these boss fights done myself. I think it'd be pretty cool to explore. But the spectator mode definitely is one of those features that is novelty, and I do appreciate it in the end. And there's probably other features I could have named here, but these are the ones that stood out to me the most. Now, there's a lot of features that could be added and might be added for patch 9.15. We don't really know. We have no information as of the patch 9.15, when it's going to be, what it's going to have, but these are just some of the things that I've been seeing players post recently about what WoW should potentially have in the future. So if you guys have any of your own wish lists, you may write them down in the comments down below. I'd like to read some of them. Or if you just want to take them straight to Discord, let me know in a message. What do you think WoW should have? I would also be down to read it there. I'd hang out on Discord all the time. That's like the best place to reach me. Link to Discord down in the description, by the way. But thank you guys so much for checking out this video. If you want to see more videos like this, just community stuff, let me know in the comments below. Hit subscribe, hit like, hit the bell, all that good stuff. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in another video.